Hey guys, how's it going? It's Friday and I'm sitting here thinking about my next Skillshare class, which is going to be called Drawing for Illustrators or something like that. I haven't come up with the actual name yet, but Drawing for Illustrators. And a few weeks ago, I posted a Instagram post declaring my intention to create this class. And I asked what your guys' thoughts on such a class would be. What are your pain points in drawing, specifically as it relates to illustration, and how might I consider that in this upcoming Skillshare class? So I have been sitting on that post in your feedback for a while, collecting notes just kind of casually, thinking about it very casually. I haven't done much actual writing of the class yet. But I thought I'd do a little bit of a brain dump / process in video format here, which maybe can help me write the class and just kind of hash out where this might head, where this could go. And I think one of the things I need to clarify in this class, both for myself and for those who would take it, is what I mean by drawing. In that post on Instagram where I asked what your pain points in drawing were, I actually got quite a few responses of people saying that they wanted to get better at things like drawing scenes, drawing characters, getting a sense of depth. I think the scenes one, knowing how to draw scenes is one of the most common questions in this kind of realm that I get asked. And I definitely want to make an actual Skillshare class about drawing more full illustrations. And this is in contrast to more spot illustrations or illustrations that don't have background. So people just want to know, how do you actually compose an illustration where there's more than just the one subject without the background? So that might mean that they're in a cityscape or in a room with furniture or in a park with trees and background and stuff like that. That's a definite thing that I would like to teach. And I've talked a little bit about that before. And my confession is that I actually avoid that as much as I can. And one of my tactics of avoiding that is simply making the main focus of the illustration as big as possible so that I don't have to draw as much background, because that could be a lot of overwhelming detail to handle. And not everyone is that interested in those kinds of details. And I include myself in that group of people who want to convey an idea quickly and not get bogged down with the craftsmanship involved in such a detailed illustration. But I digress. So what I'm talking about right now is defining drawing for illustrators. And I can only define this in the sense that I know. That means, how do I use drawing as an illustrator? What kind of illustrator am I? And anyone who knows my work knows that I don't illustrate realistically. I don't illustrate things too literally, usually. And while I have a lot of variation in how I illustrate, some things are more detailed and literal and representational, and other things are much more loose and very stylized and abstracted. I think across the board, I'm not realistic. My illustrations are not realistic. I don't go in for anatomically correct people and getting proper proportions and a sense of depth and perspective and all that. That's just not what I'm interested in doing and achieving as an illustrator. That photorealism element, I just am not interested in it. I admire illustrators who can illustrate like that, but it's just not what I want to do. I'm much more interested in graphic images, things that can use color boldly, flatly, pull you in. I'm just excited about that. I'm excited when things are boiled down to an essence. So this is a little nugget about how I illustrate and what I like. So I want to define drawing as a tool that illustrators use to both observe and then think or create concepts with. When I'm talking about drawing, I'm not talking about drawing as in how to draw a scene or how to draw a person or how to go out and draw an urban landscape or something like that. It's not a drawing class in that traditional sense where I'm showing you how to draw realistically. There are many, many far more qualified people out there to teach such things. I think how I've grown to use drawing as an illustrator really ties into my style. It ties into how I come up with my concepts, and it helps me in the sense of building up ideas to literally draw from. I think one of the hardest things for people to do is to draw from our imagination and feel like what we're drawing is good, acceptable. If you were asked to sit down in front of a piece of paper, given a pencil, and you were asked to just draw something, what would you draw? Where would you start? Would you consider what you're drawing to be good? Would you consider it something, would it be something you'd take seriously? Or would you kind of do it, I know this is bad, so I'm just going to do a bad job and laugh about it? Or would you get into it and start drawing, almost feeling like you're feeling confident? Would you feel confident and almost like you'd be proud of what you're drawing? Would you feel like you're showing off, maybe not in a negative sense? Where would you start? If I were given a piece of paper and told, okay, draw something, I would probably just start doodling. And my doodles often start with some kind of body part, usually a big pointy nose. It's just a go-to thing that I do. And it starts me off, it's a mark I can make and build on. And I'm pretty sure I didn't make this up. I'm pretty sure I was very strongly influenced by the artist Saul Steinberg, who said pretty much the exact thing. I just draw a hand or a nose and keep drawing, and the drawing kind of informs itself, to paraphrase. What would you draw? I think a lot of people would start with an eyeball or an eye, drawing an eye shape. Maybe you'd start with a house or a stick figure. There's no real wrong thing to start with, but I guess what I'm getting at is drawing is a tool, and it needs a problem to solve. It needs an appropriate use. Imagine being given a screwdriver and some screws, or a hammer and some nails, and the person who gives these to you says, use the hammer and the nails. They don't even say build something. They just say use the hammer and the nails. What would you do? What would you put the nail into? What would that nail be holding up or together? If there's a house to build and I don't even know what part of a house you'd use a hammer and nail in. I think boards, and when you're framing, you're using screws. So maybe we'll go with the screwdriver and screws analogy. So imagine you've been given a screwdriver and screws, and someone says, use these screws and screwdriver. The first thing you'd think of, obviously, is the twisting action. You know, putting the shape of the screwdriver into the head of the screw and twisting it, but then you're like, what am I going to screw together? You need something. So maybe it is the framing of a house. Suddenly you have a purpose to solve. And then from there, just kind of thinking off the top of my head, it's going to be very hard to just use a screwdriver and screws to frame a house. You probably want to get a more powerful thing to drive your screws, a power drill. or one of those, I don't know. That's about the extent of my handyman knowledge. But suddenly you start thinking, okay, I need to build on this tool. I need to get a tool that's more appropriate for the job. It's still a screwdriver and a screw, this drill and screw, but it's just more suited to the thing. And in the same way, drawing is the same. Like, do you need a pencil for drawing, or do you need charcoal? Do you need a pen, a Sharpie, a paintbrush, a nib pen? Any one of those things are drawing tools. But then those are the literal tools, but drawing as a tool itself is used to express ideas. And like I said before, there is these two modes. There is the drawing, the expressing of ideas, but then there's the observing or seeing, learning about the world around you. And so drawing for illustrators is useful both as a way of absorbing information, creating a repertoire to draw from more confidently. And so this kind of drawing might include drawing from life, drawing from like a human model or a still life in an art class, going outside and drawing what you see outside, drawing your own hand, drawing your self-portrait, drawing your foot, drawing something that's in front of you, drawing from a photograph that you find on the internet. All this is observational drawing, and it all ultimately, as an illustrator, using drawing as a tool, it's helping you see these objects and learn their forms and shapes. This does not mean you're learning these shapes so you can draw them exactly as they are in real life. Again, I'm not interested in presenting or illustrating in a realistic way an uninteresting challenge for me, and I haven't found myself to be very efficient at it. So it's more fun to take these things that I draw in real life, kind of in a realistic way, but then use them in a more playful way in the second mode of drawing, which is expressing ideas. So the second mode of drawing is it's symbolic, it's expressive. It doesn't mean that it's totally abstract and can't be realistic. But this mode of drawing is much more about the idea than about the form or the shape that you're drawing. The shape, the textures, the shading, the sense of depth or flatness, all these things, while they are elements of your style, they serve the idea, they serve the concept. What is this illustration about? And I think, I can speak again from my own experience, one of the biggest hurdles, learning curves, things to overcome for me is becoming more comfortable and confident in this aspect of using drawing symbolically, and particularly creating a visual language that's more uniquely mine, almost like hieroglyphs. You can look at hieroglyphs and know that they're ancient Egyptian. Is this visual language of things that you include in your illustration all the time that become yours. And not only are they used in a way that identify you as the artist, but they can be combined in ways to actually convey ideas. It's your language. It's your building blocks. It's your Lego. So this has been and is always a progress and evolution. It's been the thing I think that I have struggled the most to develop in my practice as an illustrator, and I believe it's what most illustrators strive for. And this way of drawing, this way of using drawing as a symbol language is at the root of one's style. It's at the core. It's your voice. And it can be modular. I mean, it can be flexible. It doesn't have to be totally exactly the same thing every time. It's just a certain way of entering a drawing And naturally that's going to have a pattern to it. Every time you draw, there's going to be things that you do that are consistent. Do your drawings have more sharp corners or curved, rounded edges? Are your shapes more blobby? Are they more geometric and square? Do you tend to favor abstraction, or do you represent things in a more literal way? Do you use fat pen strokes or marker or brush strokes? Or do you prefer fine micron pen or HB sharp pencil strokes? Do you use strokes at all, or is it all shape based? And then when it comes to actually representing ideas as objects, imagine you have done your mode 1 drawing homework and you've learned how to draw a tree, an apple tree. It's hard to draw trees and you hated every minute of that exercise, and you did it quite badly because you don't like drawing trees and real life things. And by you, I mean me. But you did it, you learned that the trunk branches off into two smaller branches, and then there's branches and leaves, and then the apples on an apple tree. Maybe you even drew the texture of the bark. Now you're about to draw an illustration that's not even about an apple tree, it's more about, maybe let's just say, temptation. And the apple tree is used as a stand-in for the Garden of Eden. Do you need to draw the apple tree realistically in your illustration? Well, for me, the answer is obviously no, because I don't draw realistic trees. I could, I'm not writing it off, but for me, the drawing challenge is now, what about this apple tree will represent temptation or the Garden of Eden to build up this story or idea? What do I need to know about it? Can I just draw a really super basic apple tree the way a kid might, with one trunk and then a big green cloudy poof and then red dots for apples? That might actually work. But maybe there's something that I learned in drawing that tree realistically that could help me create a more unique take on the apple tree that's stylized and interesting, compelling, and unique to me, references reality without imitating it, and communicates my idea clearly. I mean, that's ultimately what I'm looking for. So I'm not going to obviously be able to describe to you how I would then start drawing the apple tree. But I have some things to work with from that first mode of drawing that I did when I drew imitatively, drawing from life. The point here is, suddenly I have a visual reference in my mind that I can riff on a little bit, and I can play it. And I'm going to spend, depending on how important this tree is to my story, I'm going to spend some time figuring out what my symbol is for the tree. What's in the tree? How sparse are the leaves? Is there more focus just on the trunk and branches? Or is there more focus just on the leaves? Or is it way pulled back and it's just really like basically the stick figure equivalent of an apple tree? But I can only start playing with these ideas and making these decisions after I've actually observed and learned what an apple tree actually looks like. And that's a lot of what goes into making unique art, is having an actual understanding of the actual thing you're illustrating, and then understanding what's essential to it when you're conveying it in a more symbolic way. And then you're making decisions about what to take out or leave in such a way that you're left with this image that communicates the subject clearly, but in a compelling and interesting way, often reduced to some gesture or essential form. Maybe there'll be something about that in this drawing class, about like what decisions go into reducing something to an essential form. I think that is the kind of thing you almost just have to play around with. That's something certainly I've experienced in my own life, is that I know what I like when I see it, but it's much harder to do it. I'm going to stop there. This is running on 25 minutes. One of the most important things about this class will be about how to draw from these two different modes and how one influences the other. Drawing from life and observing from photos, and then on the other hand, drawing from your imagination in a more symbolic way.